Becoming More Human Career Special is sponsored by Fatty's Organic Spirits, created by a young female entrepreneur who set her sights on changing the way we drink. Founder Philippa Gee wants people to feel good about what they drink and created 4 organic, vegan-friendly and sustainable products which include gin, vodka and a low-alcohol spirit to support a balanced lifestyle.
Oh, well, Fran, you got me there. You know, I'm a big fan of drinking responsibly, and drinking organically is certainly that.
Oh, well, we have been known to enjoy G&T or two.
We have indeed. So I'm going to pour myself one now and sit back and listen to today's career special with your new guest.
Oh, well, we'll have to get you on soon to talk about your dazzling career, Uncle Kevin.
Yeah, well, that as may be. Otherwise, pass me the Fatty's Organic Gin and I'm going to enjoy listening.
Head to fattysorganicspirits.com to find out more. Visit drinkaware.co.uk for independent advice on alcohol consumption. We hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome back, everybody, to Becoming More Human, the career special. This week, we are joined by the wonderful Charlotte Wood. Charlotte, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Really well, thank you. I'm so happy you are joining us on the podcast this week because your journey is really exciting, and I know lots of people are going to really be able to relate to your career path.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it has been a journey, lots of twists and turns, but we'll delve into that. So I am a florist. I'm the founder of WildWood London, which specialises in flowers for events, weddings, press launches, workshops. And then I also have a faux flower arm of the business where I do things with interior designers. I have an e-shop, work with developers. And I've kind of, over the 7 years of having the business, kind of refined down what areas I enjoy, what areas work well, which areas are profitable. And it's kind of a bit of a refinement process, really, having your own business.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, congratulations for having your own business. I mean, 7 years.
I know. I don't know where the time's gone.
So, well, what were you doing before 7 years? You know, what was going on before that time? And how did you get to starting your own business? What was your path?
So I obviously got my A-levels at school. I grew up in Kent. I had just a lifelong love for fashion, drawing, designing. And so I went to London College of Fashion to do a art foundation course, which was kind of an overview of all different disciplines. And after that, I started an accessories degree and then realised I wanted to switch to women's wear. So I moved to Bristol, moved out of London and studied at the University of West of England, specialising in women's wear design, which is where I then sort of each summer I'd work as an intern. And then after graduating, I started working at Burberry as an intern and then got taken on as the bottom rung of designers. Started at the bottom.
You mean they didn't get you straight in at the top?
No, it wasn't the creative director, no. Yeah, I know. It would have been great at 23 to be creative director. But it was such an awesome experience. Like, it's very well-oiled machine. It's very corporate. But yeah, we had mannequins and we could sort of, I could work with fabrics, like gorgeous fabrics. And we also had like a live, size 6 model that would be like the catwalk fit. And I could try things on her and take pictures. And there was, because I was on the Prawsome catwalk line, that was the most creative part of the business. And I just kind of absorbed everything. I was in so many different meetings and I had a senior designer above me, an assistant designer, and the women's wear design director sat next to me. So it was just a great learning experience. And you'd see, Anna Wintour came in, like bloggers came in, and it was just an amazing start for anyone really to just sort of absorb what is fashion about. And
that's like the dream job at that
and it was long hours. But, when you like something, you don't really care about the long hours, and you had to come in quite often for weekends. There'd be photo shoots. And yeah, it was an interesting start to the world of fashion.
So that was so you sort of started out in fashion, and then from Burberry, where did you hop to?
Then I moved across because I wanted to move to East London. I was in my early 20s, all my friends were working there, living there. So I ended up having a job at All Saints. And
what a great brand. I used to love wearing All Saints.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, All Saints got leathers, denim, and my best friend worked there. And then I made an amazing community of friends that, as contacts and friends, I've really managed to sort of over the years work with when they've moved to different brands. I work with in a floral capacity. And you know how somebody works, you go the extra mile for them. You've got that belief that you've gone through a bit of a finishing training school at All Saints where you put in the hours. So you kind of know that you're made of certain stuff. And ended up working on the women's wear design team there, had a few different creative directors, and, traveled to LA, to New York for research, would make a lot of things in Portugal. And it was just a really fun time in my 20s.
And it sounds like you started to put in the hard work from sort of a very young age in your career, and you realised that quite early on.
Yeah, it just, unless you put the hard work in, things just weren't going to happen. So, and especially if you're starting at the bottom, you're the person that has to get everything done and ready and prepped for everyone else. So, you're an important function. And then as you go up the different rungs of the ladder, you kind of really respect everyone coming through and, what it takes to have a presentation and collections and all the different steps.
So whilst you were at All Saints, was there sort of a standout moment at that point where you started to pivot and realise that you didn't want to work in fashion and you hopped into floristry? How was that transition? And did it happen from All Saints? Was there another sort of transitional phase before?
No, it happened from All Saints. I think for me, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My dad's an entrepreneur, an investor, and my sisters all run their own businesses. And that's always, I think, when you have a bit of a blueprint or an influence in your life that shows you that it can be done, it's a lot easier. Maybe it was different if I had parents that were like, we study this, we do a 9-to-5 job, this is how we see society. And I would maybe look at it differently. But my dad's always thought, give it a go, give it a try. What's the worst that can happen? And I think when you go from it with that mindset, you think, well, life's quite short. Let's give this a go, and we can always change, and things aren't set in stone. I think everyone thinks it's quite binary. You do this, you do that, you move on to this, but actually, if things go wrong, it's making that decision. I think sometimes decision inertia can really stop you from trying things.
That's very true. And I think especially in those early stages of your career, when you're so desperate to get a job and to sort of jump onto that career ladder, for you to then have space to think about what it is you wanted to do, and I guess turning the table, so you're driving your career forward. How did that sit with you, and amongst all of your great contacts you'd made at that point, and sort of switching into something completely different to fashion on the outside? I imagine they're similar skill sets in some respects, but I think on the outside you went from fashion to being a florist, and that transition, and looking at everything you'd created to get to your career to a certain point, and then sort of jumping away from that. What did that feel like for you in that moment? And how did you get your mindset around being able to do that?
I think for me with fashion, and I love fashion now, I love clothes, I love beauty. I
can vouch for that. You've got the most fabulous nails that I can see that no one else can watch.
And I love that. But I think for me, I'd started to lose the love for my job role at that time. And at 28, to start to think that you didn't really like your job, and I could see what my next progression and step would be. And I didn't want that. So it was kind of putting off the inevitable. So I just thought at 28, let's try something different. And what I found was really beautiful in terms of transitioning careers is that people really do want to help you. And there is a really lovely way where people, I met a freelance florist whilst I started to retrain to become a florist. And I ended up having a job kind of a bit quicker, I hadn't set up the business just yet, but somebody had asked me to do flowers for a press day. And I thought, well, now or never, you're never quite ready for things, so let's do it. And she came in and helped me, and I paid her, but she kind of sort of really took me under her wing. And it just gave me that little bit of confidence that, if you don't know something, you can learn it, you can ask, be curious, constantly ask questions. My dad's always said, everything you say you already know, But if you're listening to others, you could learn something new, which sounds very simple, but it just sort of, yeah, you're like, oh God, yeah, that's so true. Like, be curious, ask questions, by holding on to it and not asking a question because you're worried you might look silly, well, you're preventing learning some new answers.
You're absolutely right. I interviewed somebody this week, actually, who's going to be on the podcast and may have already gone live before this one or after this one. But I will repeat what he said. Curiosity is better than embarrassment.
Definitely.
And it's a huge thing, actually, when you break that down. And especially, when you're starting out on your own or jumping careers, even if somebody listening is not wanting to start on their own, but sort of move into a different industry and make those big jumps and leaps forward. The curiosity is really what drives us, but it's embarrassment and the fear that holds us in that space for so long.
Definitely. And it kind of is like, what is embarrassment to you? What is, if you're younger and you got embarrassed for asking a question and it wasn't correct, that may stay with you as you grow up. But if you can reframe it as, I don't quite know all the answers yet, but I'm going to be curious and I'm going to look and I'm going to ask questions and find maybe a mentor or somebody to help guide me in this, it makes it a little bit less scary.
Yeah, you couldn't be more right, Charlotte. It's asking for help in any sense of the word is going to pay off. And I think when you're in your career, it's funny, actually. I wondered how you found it. At the start, asking for help is something that sort of paid off for you. But as you've grown in your business now, do you find asking for help just as easy now you're 7 years in, or is it still something that comes naturally, or do you still have to think, 7 years in, should I know all the answers now?
I still like to ask for help. I've still got lots to learn, and I've built kind of a community. I'm part of a community in sort of like the floristry world. I've got more experienced florists that, I will freelance for, they'll freelance for me. I know that I can call upon a few like ladies that have been doing it for 20, 30 years and just be like, hey, I need mechanics of this. What do you think? And I love doing courses. I'm actually doing a course in a couple of weeks on more sustainable floristry, using moss, educating myself on different ways and kind of keeping with the times. And what is it that my clients want? What is it that I would like to have as different values in my business? And, I've been doing floristry for 7 years and I studied at McQueen's and I did a City and Guilds qualification, but things are ever changing. And there's things if I don't know about them, I'll Instagram the course that I'm on. Being on a course 7 years in, I think this is a really humbling experience because it shows that I'm still constantly want to learn.
And you sound like you have a willingness to learn, and by being open, I guess, to answering questions and speaking to people, then you're continually pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, I would imagine, a lot of the time as well.
Yeah, definitely. And with the course that I'm going to be doing, the lady said, this isn't a competition to be the best florist. This is a competition to share and evolve. And I love that framing.
Yes, that's nice.
And when I'm with clients, I'm always like, what is the most important aspect for you? Because we're going to tailor this to what you want. So having a massive arch that you'll go through and then you won't see for the rest of the event, maybe we'll put that budget somewhere else. Like, is having really elaborate centerpieces your main focus, or actually do you want to have a really informal, lots of candles and flowers around the dance floor? How can we tailor this to your needs?
You mentioned very briefly about values. Do you believe personal values are important, and have they challenged you in your career to date?
I think personal values are so integral because from your personal values, you can figure out what your business values are. And if they're completely at odds, it's never going to feel that aligned. And for me, integrity is everything. So I'm really honest, and I really appreciate honesty myself. And I think, when I've had situations where an event, something's maybe gone slightly wrong, you can fix it. You can find out a solution, be honest about it. I've let somebody know. With weddings, I think it can be slightly different because do they need to know every single stage of it? Maybe not. Can you fix it quite quickly? Yes. But there is an element of I will keep people involved. If something's going to be happening, it's not going to be a massive, nasty surprise. But it's just sort of understanding when do you step in and say that. But personal values, the way I want to work now and what I want to take on and what I want to spend my life doing is maybe different to at the start of the business when I said yes to everything, worked 7 days a week, maybe didn't charge enough. And I would have had a risk of burnout doing that.
Do you believe that your personal and work values need or should sit side by side, or are they one thing that gets just applied to your life as a whole? And from starting out working for a big company and then switching into working for yourself, have you really noticed those sort of shifts take place in your own sort of belief system that you have?
Definitely. I mean, when you work for someone else, you're working towards their ethics, their company values, their business, and it's their branding and how they see the business evolving. So you kind of almost do need to fit into that. And also they have their own work culture. And I think from working at different businesses and then you do your own, I'm in control of my work culture. So if I have different freelancers and, I had a challenge come up where one of my freelancers, she hurt herself, and it was like, I've got other people here, they can cover it. I'm going to go to the hospital with her, make sure she's okay. We're all human at the end of the day. Everyone can pull together and make sure we get done what we need to. But if somebody has hurt themselves, and she was trying to work through it, and I just said to her, let's have a moment, let's breathe, let's have some water, let's just check this out in A&E, because I'm worried you might be concussed. So, there's that moments where you just need to realise that, you can get it done, but our own health and sanity is and well-being is paramount.
Absolutely. You sound like a great boss. What is it that you strive for then, Charlotte?
I think for me, it's a balance of feeling creatively fulfilled, working on briefs collaboratively with brands or wedding planners or clients, and I love doing workshops. I love teaching. So with the pandemic, I had to switch workshops on Zoom, and send out all the kits beforehand. And I think that really just showed how adaptable we are. You can just slightly pivot the business. I wasn't able to do any weddings for a year and a half, apart from a few little pockets here and there where I managed to do a couple. I could do workshops in person, but then my faux side of my business, really, really grew. I focused more attention on that. And then I was just kind of rescheduling brides and making sure that they were supported as well, because, there's so much that goes into a wedding or an event, and there's so much emotion behind it, and the dreams and the hopes, and then, dealing with a global pandemic, and then some brides would lose their job, or, different circumstances change. So my role is not just, you pay me this, I do this. It's more, I've got to know you over a couple of years. I care about
so
you.
Interesting.
I want to, I have some clients where I've done their wedding, I've done their baby shower, then maybe colleagues at work, then another family member. I kind of become, a bit of a confidant, and it's that personal experience. Like, I know that maybe my business may not be a legacy business, and I'm okay with that. My values are, I want it to be quite small and personable. And maybe a side of it, the faux business maybe gets bigger, but I know how I like to work, and I know what my clients come back to me for.
When you started that pivot into setting up your own business and going into floristry, did you ever think for 1 minute that you would end up being a confidant to people, almost a extension of their friendship group, a coach, a therapist, a counsellor? I mean, you seem to do much more than just deliver flowers to people. It's a much bigger task. Did you realize what you were taking on when you made that jump, and are there skills there that you really had to learn and adapt and develop for you to maintain all sides of the business?
Definitely. I didn't know what it would entail because I'd never done it before. And maybe some people aren't as personable as me. Maybe people aren't as interested. So when a client comes to me and I'm like, oh, where are you getting your dress from? Or, I know a great calligrapher stationer, or, I know an amazing bridal store in Notting Hill. I know a great photographer, and I'm happy to share my contacts. Like, I know that they'll do a fantastic job, and I like building relationships. So that's important to me. That's one of my values. So I'm going to imbue that into my business. And, separately, I also am studying to be a psychotherapist. So that's one of my interests That's one of my hobbies. I mean, when I become trained, it won't be a hobby, but that's, that's something that may just take a day a week and I still have a business. And I think it's, for me, there's two interests that I have in my life that one doesn't take priority over the other. You skew your calendar. So yeah, obviously if there's a wedding that weekend, that will take precedence, but I think in this day and age, you can do multiple things and not just be defined by one career, one role.
Do you feel that's the narrative that we're still being told?
I think it does, yeah. With schooling and education, I don't think it really equips people for later life. You don't get taught about mortgages, emotional resilience. There's a lot of things that maybe the program could be added in, and it does feel like, you feed into university and then a career, but people are more open to trying different things now. So it definitely is changing the narrative.
Well, that leads me nicely into what does your career, what does the impact of your career have on your personal life? Especially as you're running your own business, I can imagine.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a bit of a balancing act, and it's definitely not 9 till 5. Sometimes I'll work at weekends, sometimes I won't. I think now I won't overload it and maybe take on as much as I used to, where I'd freelance for somebody, then I'd have my own job coming back that evening, and then I'd work all through weekend and then wouldn't have a day. I now try and put some bookends so that I've maybe got a period of a few days where it's really intense, and then I've got a rest day. Sometimes that doesn't always work out, but the intention is there to have some respite at some point.
Nice.
Otherwise, what's the point in burning yourself out? Then you're not good for anything.
Did you find that when you were working for the large corporations at the beginning of your career, you were actually working just as crazy hours then as you do now? And are you able to sort of balance your schedule better? And I think where I'm sort of getting to it on this question is a lot of people who may have thought about starting their business or starting a company are scared about the time of which and they get soaked up in their whole life, and they're never going to be off work. But actually, is that a bit of a myth? Because we can control it better, and when you work for large corporations, it's harder to push back and have those boundaries. Have you felt that it's a different compromise in terms of working for yourself?
I mean, working with someone else, you have a regular wage. There's like a bit more of a standard of progression and promotions, but then you're not in control of your time or the trips or the things that you need to do to get everything done. When you work for yourself, you do need to put the hours in because you've got to set it up. You've got to make sure it works. You've got to do your market research. You've got to make sure people actually want the product. But then I know that in terms of my day, I'm saying yes to what comes in. So I can, for me, what's really important is I like to exercise 3 times a week. I can put that in the middle of the day or the morning or the evening and change that. But if I work for someone else, I might not be able to have that flexibility. And I know offices and corporations are changing, but that is definitely a perk that is important to me to have that.
Do you have any other, is that one of your like non-negotiable activities, would you say, that helps you stay grounded? Do you have any other tips or tricks to help you stay grounded?
Meditation. I'd gone to the London Meditation Centre and got given a mantra, so that was transcendental meditation. And I never really knew much about meditation beforehand. Wasn't really sure. I'd sit there with my thoughts, not sure if I even want to do that. But I went along with an open mind, met some great people, all from like loads of different careers, and thought, well, I'll give this a go. And I think the last year I've committed to like 20 minutes each day. And it's just a bit of space for me to get away from things, clear my head. And I notice when I don't do it, it's just things are a bit harder. Maybe anxiety can creep in, worries may appear. But when I've meditated, I just feel a baseline level that I can kind of then work from. And I just seem like a happier person.
Do you have any advice for anyone listening who keeps hearing about meditation and reading about meditation and maybe even listening to people talk about it, but actually starting it, as you know, is
I think starting is always the hardest, isn't it? Starting anything. And it's almost removing the blockages away from it. So what is stopping you from starting? Is it you need to get up a little bit earlier? Is it you have no space, or it's very noisy? Do you need to maybe go somewhere else to do it? You need to kind of set yourself up for a success. And for me, I know that if I need to just do it in the morning, otherwise the day runs away and I haven't had a moment. And if I can get another 10-minute in later on in the day, that's a win. But my 20-minute one in the morning is non-negotiable. And I think,
sorry, do you do your meditations around mantras, or do you do
yeah,
it around
I've got my own like mantra. And this sounds really woo-woo, but it's works for me. And I think it's really become mainstream, and it's really important to just figure out what works for you, because everyone is individual. And for me, I wanted to go somewhere where they kind of talked me through the process and what it meant, and a bit of a ceremony. And I'm the sort of person that likes to learn, go on a course, figure it out, then do my own version. But somebody might be just as happy with the Calm app or Headspace, and that could be a great start. So it's just figuring out what it is that you need.
That's such great advice. I think it can seem quite overwhelming, this idea of meditation, as we sit still to find ourselves, which sometimes can feel counterintuitive when we're told to be on the go 24/7, and we're human beings spend a lot of our time in the active stage rather than the being stage. So I think meditation is a real strong part. And I know that you can read so many accounts of people in business especially who get a huge amount from meditation. And as a business owner yourself, you know that your mind never switches off. So being able to control that and harness the power of your mind is really important.
Definitely. Yeah.
So if you could imagine a new world, Charlotte, where we get to rewrite our careers and our personal lives and maybe how they intertwine and how they relate to one another, how would this look for you?
I mean, for me, I think the 9 to 5 would be dismantled. It's a bit of an antiquated way of working. And through the pandemic, I've got friends that are mums that are trying to balance being a working mum. And there has been more of the hybrid of working from home and going into the office, which probably never would have happened pre-pandemic. And I've seen how that has impacted them in terms of dropping off the kids to school in the morning, or maybe their partner can pick them up and they're still able to work and get the hours done, but it's not confined to such a strict structure that they're almost like freelancers within the corporation. They just are able to have that tiny bit of flexibility. Maybe you put your kids to bed and then have some dinner and then work for a few extra hours, but like it's kind of more on your schedule. And I've seen that shift, that employers need to have a bit of a hybrid of working in certain sectors, and that the 9 to 5 hasn't always been working for everyone.
That's so true. I think we do need to dismantle that. And I know it's been challenged in previous years with the sort of 4-hour working week or the 4-day working week. I mean, we've seemed to have challenged what that looks like. I think, as you know, as a business owner, trying to get something off the ground in 4 days or 4 hours isn't going to happen.
I'm being realistic about that. Yeah.
And, we have 7 days. I mean, something that I was told from a young age is you have 7 days in a week, not 5. And I think when we look at the bigger picture of how we utilize time and days, I agree with you. We could really slice and dice and remodel this to suit.
Definitely. And have like building blocks that, you have different sections in your day. Maybe you need to chunk it for emails or the work that you do, or maybe you become more of a freelancer and you work for different people. And how do you protect your mental health that way when you have 3 or 4 bosses? And when are you available? When are you not? Do you have a separate work phone? Like, what is your boundary? And how can you protect that? And does exercise factor? Are you really family orientated? Do you have spending time with friends? Do you love to travel? It's almost writing down the values and things that mean the most to you, and then seeing if there's a way of putting it into your work. I'm aware that can be a bit of a pipe dream. Some people need to have their role as a lawyer. They have to work 60 hours a week. So that is the industry they've chosen. But I think before we go into an industry, it's almost figuring out if your personality and the way you are will fit that career.
Oh, what a smart thing to say. Like that's such a smart way of looking at it, because, we are told often at younger ages when we're not sure what careers or what to do is to chase the money a lot of the time. And you hear stories all the time, especially in the finance world, of people, stuck in their job, but they're doing it for the money. And, if that drives them and they're happy, that's fine. But often the stories are not quite reflective of that. And, we know lots of people in the fashion industry, for instance, who have set up careers from working in those sort of corporate environments and finding themselves, I guess, later in life.
Yeah, exactly. And finding out what happiness means for you, or if maybe you have your job and you've got your commitments and actually, you can kind of get stuck in it. You have the mortgage to pay, then you're used to a certain lifestyle, but actually you're working all hours for that lifestyle, but you don't really get to enjoy it. So is there a hobby that you like that you can work on, or is there a way of migrating out of that and maybe being a consultant? Like, maybe it takes smaller pivots to get there, but there is still a hope or a dream to be able to do something maybe that's more meaningful for you.
One thing you said at the beginning is you realised what you didn't want. And I think that's a really smart thing for people to think about is what they don't want. And listening to how you're almost reframing all of our sort of current structures of career journeys is really, really interesting. And I mean, I know, for instance, the way I operate as well, and I'm terrible come sort of 3 o'clock in the afternoon. 3 till 6 is like my worst time. I try not to do much during those hours if I can, because I can't concentrate. I'm usually after a cup of tea. I don't know why I have a sweet tooth at that hour.
You'd usually find me in Tesco's near All Saints, just popping out or getting another hot chocolate or coffee.
Exactly. I'm much better early in the morning, and then I'm done for me. But yeah, it's really interesting. I think it's such a great thing to be able to challenge that now. And I think, like you mentioned, the post-COVID world, we've started on that trajectory, and I hope employees continue to challenge the place of work to ensure it supports their mental and physical well-being. So, Charlotte, is there a book or a film, a piece of music, maybe a TV series even, that inspires you the most in your career, and why?
I'm a total bookworm, so I tend to get through 1 or 2 books a week. That is it's a way that helps me go to sleep. It actually makes me want to hop into bed. A couple of books I've recently read are Atomic Habits by James Clear, and it's kind of, people, especially in January, people want to have all these grand ideas for New Year's resolutions, but actually motivation can get you a certain place, but actually it kind of reframed my thoughts on habits and, systems. So for me, I probably naturally don't always want to exercise, but I know I feel better afterwards. And once I'm there, I've loved it. The motivation to have it 3 times a week is not always there. So he says, you need to create systems. So for me, being accountable with somebody waiting there or paying for a class and pre-booking it on the Sunday the week before helps me achieve my goal of working out. But if I didn't have that system in place, it probably wouldn't happen. So it's understanding, and it sounds kind of technical, but it's not. It's just, what will get you there and how can you achieve it, and how can you kind of put a few of these systems in place so that you've got more free time and you can, get to enjoy more of the things that you love.
I need to read this book. That's exactly what I need. That sounds amazing.
And another book I've read recently is by Johan Hari. He was on Stephen Bartlett's podcast, and his book's called Lost Connections. And it's fascinating and talks about depression, anxiety, and, taking medication or not taking medication, but gives a real view on different places around the world and what levels of anxiety or depression they have, and how community can combat that, and, how to reconnect with others.
Wow. So he's coming at that, is it from more of a spiritual place than...
It's not super spiritual. It's more, he does a lot of research and he spends a lot of time with people, really understanding their story. And he talks to a lot of doctors that maybe have an Eastern philosophy or Western philosophy, and really does broaden the scope to understand from a holistic point of view what's happening. And he talks about big pharma, which is, interesting, and how things are set up.
That sounds really interesting, and really it sounds like you've got a real diverse look on life in terms of how you observe it, and your interest in it, and your interest in people. And I guess that stems a lot from the work you've done over the last however many years in your career to date.
Definitely. And a third book, because I continue to be such a bookworm, is called Please Yourself, and it's by a psychotherapist called Emma Reed Turrell, and it's how to stop people pleasing. And the origins of people pleasing, why you do it, and how to stop doing it, and understanding putting those boundaries in. And I think as a small business owner, boundaries are super important to be able to, manage your time and your life in the way that you want to have it.
I think I need to read that book. We probably all need to read it, especially starting out a business on your own as well. You fall into that, whether you like it or not, you fall into that camp, don't you? Because you have to say yes to everything. I do believe it's testament to why you're still here 7 years down the line and why, you've still got your business. There's a balance obviously to be struck within that, but you do find in your career to start with, it's heavily down that path, isn't it?
Definitely. And you do have to put some time in. You do have to work hard. This isn't a case of just working a couple of hours each day, but it's understanding working hard, working smart, and, not completely negating your personal life for the sake of work.
So, Charlotte, the last question I have for you is, what does becoming more human mean to you?
For me, it's kind of determining what is important to me. And I think growing up, you kind of sort of listen to a lot of society chatter or maybe family chatter. And actually, I'm kind of not wanting to just follow what society dictates, certain milestones of your life. If your life doesn't align to that, people can feel a bit like, where are they? Where do they fit? But actually understanding what's important to you and really staying true to that, and almost, listening to your own self-talk. Sometimes, you can have really negative self-talk, and is that helpful? Actually, can you reframe it? And can you look at things as a possibility and a different way of doing things? And I think that gives you a bit more freedom to be able to enjoy life on your terms.
Wow. I absolutely love that. You've said so much in this recording today that I can't wait to listen back to it myself, because you're very concise with your thoughts, and I love that. And the fact that you've jumped careers and forged your own path as well, and now you're studying a psychotherapy course just on top of everything else. I think it really demonstrates your true values, which is being curious and staying curious, and that zest for life will see you right the way through to an old age. And I'm hoping that people listening will take a lot from that, because we are told to have a certain career, and not are we told, we often, think we need to get married at a certain age. We often think we need to buy a house, and we often think we need to have children, and we have to do these things that society tells us to do at certain ages. And those social constructs sometimes then challenge being curious. And some people go through life thinking, well, it's all right for you because you don't have this and I have that. And it's not true in its purest form. And you've touched on that today as well, around time and what we do with our time, and how time shows up differently, and what we do to make the most of it. So, thank you so much, Charlotte, for sharing.
Thank you. It's been great. I've loved
it. So many pearls of wisdom on your career journey to date, and I'm excited to see the next chapter.
Thank you. Yeah.
Once you've
interesting to see how it all unfolds.
Fully qualified. So we'll have to get you back on again. It'll be interesting to see where life takes you next.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Charlotte. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and spread the word of becoming more human. We are currently on iTunes and Spotify. Thank you so much for your support, and see you next week.